back, everyone, to our Groundskeeper chat series. I am your host, Meg Kruger. I am joined by my co-host today, Weston Appenfeller, and a guest that everyone here at the Pioneer HQ office is most excited to hear about this episode. You know, we do this, we live and breathe groundskeeping, our customer base, everything like that. And probably 80% of the people that I told, oh, I'm, going to be interviewing the turf manager for Central Park, everyone was like, oh my God, why didn't I think about that being a job? Like, and we live and breathe this industry. So you are in the 1% of the 1% of the 1%, where it's like even groundskeepers are like, oh, I didn't even think of that being a job. So I'll
Thanks.
give Weston the opportunity to introduce our guest. And I'm sure this is going to be hot off the press. Everyone can't wait to hear your story. So we'll get rolling.
All right.
Yeah,
No pressure now.
I did a
Exactly.
little bit of homework. I did do a little bit of homework, and I've known you for a little while. But today's guest is the son of a golf course superintendent. Um, he is the turf care manager at Central Park, a CSFM, Mr. Zach Holm. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And before we get into it, I always like to ask a question that is just off the cusp. We'll get into your story and all the, all the guts of the job. But before that, what do you do when you're away from home? How do you relieve the stress? How do you leave the office behind? Where do you go? What do you do? Who do you do it with?
That's probably changed through the years. Right now, I drive probably almost an hour and a half home, so I get to think about all those things from the office. And by the time I get out of the car, I've vented to myself, right? To kind of leave that at home. But on the weekends after work and stuff, a lot of credit goes to my wife, to my family. Once we get home, we're home, right? Like we spend a lot of hours at work, and we live in a really cool spot, far away from the city, and we can kind of decompress there.
Nice.
Brilliant. Yeah, I will say your Twitter profile photo is like it's aspirational. You've got the little baby and then you've got the toddler, and I know they've grown up since then, but I just
Yeah.
love that you put that right at the forefront. Like, all your posts are about turf, golf, everything like that. But
Yep.
then you have that brilliant balance of trickling in, your family and how much, you can see how much that means to you.
I think that's like the coolest part of just being a human, right? Is being a dad. For me, being a dad, right, is, my kids aren't super athletes. I love sports, but that's okay. We find other ways to have fun together and, you know, watch them grow up. That picture is really old now. My daughter just turned 5 last month, so
I love it.
I should probably pick a new one.
No, keep it. It's so cool. It's like the ultimate super dad photo. I love it.
Thanks.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. Give us your story, or Meg's favorite question. Give us your
Okay.
turf origin story.
Yes, from A to Z. As Weston mentioned, you have roots in the turf industry,
I do.
with family, but give us your, how you decided to kind of stay in the family tree of turf and make this a career.
Yeah, I think it's probably maybe a little bit different than others. My dad was a superintendent from the time that I can remember. Go visit him on the golf course. I wanted to be a golf course architect for like a really long time, from 6th grade up until sophomore year of high school. I have hundreds of course drawings. I was like
I love
dead set
that.
on it. I
Wow.
had it planned out. I was going to go to U of A for become a landscape architect, and then go overseas for a golf course architecture program. And my dad was so against it. Because my dad worked in public golf, so he saw for a management company, so he saw a lot of the ugly sides, especially in the downturns of golf.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, "You're not going to work in the golf industry. You're not going to work in the golf industry." And there was a time when I was a sophomore in high school that the course he worked at felt they no longer needed a superintendent, and he found himself working as a hourly employee for the Padres, which was the year that Petco Park opened. So sports fan, love the Padres. There
Mm-hmm.
was a kind of company picnic they had for employees one time the team was on the road. So we were eating on the field. They were playing the Cubs. We were watching the game on the Jumbotron. And I
So
was like, so
cool.
Dad, your boss comes to work it was Luke Yoder. I was like, he comes to work every day and gets to like just takes care of this, like, and gets to watch all the games and do all this stuff. And I was like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, I could do that.
Yeah.
That maybe I don't want to be a golf course architect. And so my dad, Steve Whiteman, was a huge supporter of the local superintendents association. So I was like, okay, great, go talk to Steve. Um, and so he's a person that I've talked to since really then, like a sophomore in high school. Of okay, this is something I'm now interested in. What should I do? And that's kind of where it started.
So cool. And, you know, has your dad gotten to live through the resurgence of golf and kind of leave it on a happier note? Because it's definitely, at least in our neck of the woods, like I go golfing now, and I never had, any interest in it. But how COVID really, like, revitalized the golf industry. Did your dad get to have that experience?
Not really. So he
Okay.
he worked for American Golf at that time that he was let go, and he eventually found his way to what was a pretty perfect spot for him. Was like a 9-hole like retirement private course.
Yep.
And him and I never really talked much about it, but I feel like he enjoyed his time there. But then they literally eliminated the superintendent position. They were like, "We have a guy who does the landscape. We think he can do the golf course." So my dad's actually in the sports field industry now.
Okay.
Um, he works for Mike Kearns at Snapdragon Stadium.
Oh,
I don't know
very
what his
cool.
title is. I think he's a coordinator or something like that. He's like second or third, like second type assistant job. So yeah, he's come over to this side of the industry now.
I love it.
So, so when it's like Thanksgiving and you guys are sitting around, are you guys talking fertilizer brands or chemicals that you could use in different situations? Like, there's not many second generation, like, or I guess,
Mhm.
first and second generation groundskeepers out there. What is that like to have somebody like that you can bounce stuff off of?
I mean, I think it goes both ways, right? Like it's nice to be able to have somebody who's not directly involved in your day to day to be like, what do you
Mhm.
think about this? Um, but I also got really scared when he would ask me questions too. Like one of my favorite things I did when I worked for the Red Bulls, I'm sure we'll get into work history like after college, was doing early orders. Like I love doing our early orders. My favorite thing, coming up with fungicide programs and stuff like that. And so when my dad was superintendent, he'd be like, "Hey, take a look at my program," and he'd be spraying like Dorado 6 times, alternating with Daconil, and I'm like, "Crap, Dad, there's better stuff out there." But at the same time, he'd been doing it for 20 years and been successful at it. So it's like I almost
Yeah,
don't want to tell him, "Hey, why don't you try this?" Because I feel really bad if it didn't work. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah,
There's that fine line, but it still happens, right? Of like, hey, this is something we did, or he just texted me. Snapdragon had Man United. Was it last night, the night before, something like that? Of hey,
yeah.
we're hosting this tonight. So we still have that back and forth. Not as
That's
we
really
don't
cool.
get as technical anymore, but just more cool
Yeah.
things that we get to do.
Yeah. Is there ever a world where you two could be on the same crew, or are you the type of a father and son that are best at different end zones of the field?
We could 100% get along on the same crew.
Yep.
We will be geographically challenged. I
Okay.
was
Yeah.
born and raised in San Diego, and that's where him and my mom and really the rest of my family still lives. And you can't get much further away in the United States than where I am. So
Yep.
I
Well,
don't
I
I,
will have
I
to
don't see
say, I
that
think I
changing.
think he picked a pretty good place. I think if it ever came down to it, he might be able to sway others to choose San Diego over New York.
I don't know if he can convince my wife.
Okay.
Um,
She
we'll
likes the
see.
winter.
No, but we can walk to my in-laws house. So
There you go.
there's
Sold.
there
Sold.
there there's a big, and honestly, when talking about family, like it's my kids spent the night at their parents' house last night. Like it's great just to have somebody that you can walk to their house and hey, I'm running late from work. Can you pick up the kids from school? I'll be there in 30 minutes type of deal. Um,
Absolutely.
you can't put a
Absolutely.
price tag on that.
Yeah, my husband, he has, aspirations to live like all over the place. He is constantly sending me like realtor, houses in every nook and cranny of the world. But we live like 3 minutes from his parents, and he's one of eight. So we live 3 minutes between like all the aunts and uncles.
Everybody. Yeah.
And I'm like, he doesn't realize how special that is. And like also how expensive childcare is if you don't have your mother-in-law
Yeah.
who's doing it all
Yeah.
for you.
For sure.
So that's why we're stuck in Cleveland, Ohio. But that's great. So after that family picnic where the Padres kind of gave you that first taste of
Yep.
sports field, where did you go from there? How did the dream board change? Did you start drafting up, baseball fields and things like that?
So I really wanted to be, you know, work at a major league stadium, be a head groundskeeper at a major league stadium. Um, can almost throw out the first internship I did because I did it because I had Padres season tickets.
Okay.
So I felt like I needed to come back to San Diego that first summer because I had season tickets already. So I interned at a golf course in San Diego, and then really started trying to think long and hard about not only where I was going to intern, because a little bit like your husband, I don't necessarily care where I live,
Yeah.
but who I was going to intern for. So at the time, Chris Calcaterra was the president-elect of his STMA, of SFMA, and the conference that year was in Phoenix. So we went on a seminar in Wheels Store, and I just walked up to him and was like, "Can I do an internship here?" I probably led with I'm a Padres fan, which I've now learned in my career is a really bad thing to do if you tell someone you're a fan of the team. But the Padres play spring training in Peoria. Okay. So I was able to do an internship for the city of Peoria with him and Al. I'm going to pronounce his last name wrong. I'm pretty sure it's Siebert. But I got to split between a community park and a spring training facility. So that was really my first sports turf internship. I did go back during the wintertime and work for Steve at Qualcomm. I didn't get paid for it, but just that experience of being in an NFL stadium was invaluable. And my parents live 20 minutes away, so it's not like I had a bunch of costs. Then I really needed to do an internship for credit, even though I had done a few. I never actually submitted them for college credit. So Rob Galdieri was the assistant sports field manager for the Scranton Wilkes-Barre Yankees. We went to we were throwing partners in college on the baseball team. And at that time, I had a girlfriend who's now my wife. And so Scranton was an hour and a half away from her house. So it was a real logical choice. I was able to do an internship there. And him and Steve Horn, who's the head groundskeeper, really gave me a lot of leeway to do, I got to own home plate. And so as a college kid, really new to the industry, that was really great to be able to take ownership of something. And then that next year I graduated from college and kind of did a full year internship, / maybe a little bit more. Weston and I almost crossed paths by a day. It was for the Red Sox. My first day with the Red Sox was the day after Weston's last day.
And that's why you're still in the industry. You got
that
saved.
had to have been it.
Did I interview you? Do you remember that?
So funny story about that, and I don't know, I'm going to share it, but it is what it is. The year before, I had interviewed with Griff.
Okay.
And I did not get an internship. I was not selected. The next year, we had a rogue turf club in college that me and someone else started. We went to Fenway on a field trip, and Dave was on the scholarship committee. And my recommendation letter on the scholarship committee was from Steve Whiteman, who is someone that Dave looked up to. So out of the blue, Dave just called me and said, "Hey, I want you to come here for an internship." So I didn't interview for an internship that year. I just kind of got it.
Look at that.
Yeah,
I'm off the hook. So
you're off the hook. You're good.
Amazing.
That was a really great experience. I'm pretty open with people about it. That there was things that we did that year that you, as someone now with a little bit more experience, I'd question, be like, "What are we doing this for?" Mm-hmm. But fast forward a few years later, I found myself being like, that's why we did it. And I started doing it as a head groundskeeper. So at the time, maybe I didn't realize it, but that was a really valuable internship for me. There was a lot of interns. It's the only internship I did where there was 7 other interns. So it was really competitive to be yeah. I just graduated college. So I was like, I really need to stick out I'm not going back to school. I need to find a real job after this. Mm-hmm. So it was a great summer, and then leading into the fall, I just wish the Red Sox had not absolutely tanked that year, and we could have had some playoff baseball, but it's a story for another day. Then I was fortunate enough to get a job with Brickman at the time as an assistant groundskeeper under Ryan Woodley in Staten Island. Won minor league field of the year that year for single A. And then that transitioned to a full-time job as the head groundskeeper for the York Revolution, but it was a Brickman managed facility. Okay. And that's, I was 23 and head groundskeeper. There was a lot of growing up to do there.
Yeah.
And honestly, the hours weren't fun and the pay was terrible, but looking back on it, like those were some of the best kind of summer nights. Like watering an infield scan after a game is one of my favorite things to do. And I don't know, I really enjoyed that summer, even though it was, there was a couple of weeks where you'd work 100 hours.
Yeah.
But then I got engaged and my fiance was like, not sure how I feel about you working 100 hours. So I was starting to look for other jobs, and there was a sales position in New Jersey that was I was like, where's Randolph in relation to your parents' house? Because that's where she wanted to get back home.
Yep.
She's like, oh my God, it's 15 minutes away. You have to apply. And I was like, all right, I'm going to apply because there's no way I'm going to get a sales position. And then that gives me a little leeway to apply for like jobs in Arizona, because I love the desert, like Palm Springs, Arizona. That's where I'd probably pick to live. But somehow I got it. And so then I couldn't say no. So we moved to New Jersey. I did that for a little while, but I missed the outdoors, like the tangible part of like, okay, today sucked, but look at what we accomplished.
Yeah.
So I was just fortunate that the Red Bulls were looking for an assistant then. So jump ship to the Red Bulls as an assistant, which kind of after a year or so turned into running the practice facility. Like I had facility responsibilities and my title was manager of operations. And that was probably one of the best cultured companies I ever worked for. It was awesome coming to work every day. COVID kind of threw a big wrench into everything, but pre-COVID, it was, we worked hard. We were not 100-hour weeks, but we worked some long weeks. And but there's just something about the team atmosphere that we had both at the groundskeeper level, but really organizationally. And maybe it's because I was fortunate to be at the practice facility, so it was around the actual team all the time. So I was there for a little over 6 years. Those were 6 great years. And then through a couple of different people, I found out about this job, and here I've been here a little over 3 years now.
Amazing. And I may have missed it among there, but where did you go to school?
I went to Delaware Valley. I still call it Delaware Valley College. It's Delaware
Valley
University now, but it'll always be DVC to me.
Okay. And is that where you met your wife?
Kind of.
Okay.
So I mentioned Rob was my throwing partner. He's 2 years older than me. So freshman year and sophomore year on the baseball team, he was my throwing partner. Then junior year, he had graduated. My throwing partner is now my brother-in-law. So that's how I met my wife. And then I still have 2 years of college eligibility left. I got hurt junior year and medically redshirted and then didn't play senior year. So
well, look at that. You could head back. You never know.
Maybe in a few years, there'll be a small college needing a groundskeeper and I can be a 40-something-year-old junior.
I love it. Those are big dreams if I've ever heard them.
Yeah, I don't think it'll ever happen because I can't really throw a ball anymore. So
amazing.
Maybe I can play on the golf team.
So that's what brought you cross country, though. Was that opportunity to like be on the baseball team and go to school at that college?
So I didn't apply to any schools in California. I don't have a good reason as to why. It's just I think I wanted to leave home.
Yep.
And I applied to Kansas State, Del Val, North Dakota State, Tennessee Tech.
Okay.
And thinking back on it, I don't know why I didn't apply to bigger school like a Penn State. I remember seeing there's a million Penn State campuses. And I was like, if I'm going to go across country, I only want to go to like the main campus. Yeah. And the internet existed then. So I don't know why I didn't research that, but everything happens for a reason, right? So I got into all 4 of those schools and I wanted to still play baseball because I didn't play my senior year of high school. And so Del Val was Division III. And I literally just showed up and was like, I want to play baseball and walked on.
Nice.
But the other schools were Division I, so that would have been probably harder to do.
Definitely. Weston, any questions? Because I've got 3 that I'm ready to just, keep steamrolling, but I'll give you an opportunity.
I'm just going to let you keep steamrolling. My dogs, for some reason, are going crazy above me.
Oh,
and
nice,
so I was trying to text my daughter, just being like, hey, what's going on here? Why are the dogs barking? But no, I'm ready to keep going. So you just laid out, kind of all your steps, where you've
Yep.
been, your history, your father, you know, how have you had this or seen, you talked about being at 23, being a head groundskeeper and probably, like you said, you had a lot of growing up to do at that time and
Yeah.
a lot of figuring it out. But how have you seen that groundskeeper role evolve since the time that you were, in the early days with York, um, or even in your internship years, what you witnessed to now where you're at? How does that evolution look to you?
I mean, I think there's one thing as an intern that all my internships were great, but the one thing you miss out on is that like people relationship that you have with, in the case of professional sports, the front office. Um, so that was a lot of the learning that I had that year in York, and then now being, in a management position, since then through the my career is seeing how little of it's really growing grass and how much of it's not only people management if it's people under you, but the collaboration you have with other departments. Um, and getting, not when I say recognition, not like a pat on the back from anybody, but that you're a part of that a seat at the table is what I'm searching for there.
Yeah.
Is going about trying to get a seat at the table. And I think as an industry, there's examples of it getting better. And then I think there's also still times where it's kind of stagnant and you talk to a fellow groundskeeper and they have no idea what's going on kind of above them.
Yeah. Well, in your guys' experience, at least when you were in school, was that a part of the turf degree? Like any business class, anything like that?
No, I minored in sports management
Okay.
intentionally. Um, I forget what internship it was, but I realized that like there's a whole group of front office people who make decisions about things that may happen on the field, not how you maintain them.
Yeah.
And most of them were sports management kids. So I was like, all right, well, I'll go take some sports management classes.
Smart.
Um, and I'd say that helped a little bit. I mean, I still learned a lot in York. Like I gave a talk at the national conference a few years, it was now a number of years ago. Because when I first got to York, I was that kind of what I call a grumpy groundskeeper, right? Like, get off my field, you can't do anything here.
Yeah.
And I hate now people who refer to things as saying my field, but I also quickly learned that the team's there to make money, and if you just get in the way of them making money, either they're not going to include you in the conversation, or they'll just find someone who's going to go down that path.
For
So
sure.
I had a big mentality change that year that I feel like started to help, and then obviously I left and moved on. But then when I was at Red Bull, we had the opportunity through SNHU to basically get a degree for free.
Okay.
So I got a master's in sports management. Just again, like the conversations of people you're having within the front office, they don't all have sports management degrees, but they all have some sort of business degree. Some of them are in sports management. So to understand what they're learning in class,
Yep.
um, which shouldn't be breaking news to anybody. They don't talk about fields at all.
Yep.
Um, but just to try to understand someone else's perspective of what they're trying to accomplish in their goals, and then is there a way that both parties can be successful? And that's really hard, right? Because it's not just you as a groundskeeper or field manager uh, admitting that right we need to bend isn't the right word, but we need to be open to someone else's opinion.
For
But
sure.
that other party also needs to be, and that's kind of out of your control. So I think again, an organization like Red Bull, where the culture was really great, that flowed easier. And then there's also, there's examples of no matter how open a sports field manager might be, that if the other side's not willing to reciprocate, it's still a one-way conversation.
Definitely. And based on, when you guys have had interns or the next generation coming into it, do you think that's something at the university level that they've realized, like, hey, we need to get these kids this type of like business side of the turf industry, or is it still a huge, missing component?
I think it's gotten better. I mean, I don't know exactly what classes someone has to take at Del Val now, but
Yeah.
I remember Dr. Lindy asking, like, not just to me, it was to all recent graduates of, hey, what are classes that you felt were really valuable here? What are classes that we're missing that you think will help our program. And I gave him that feedback of, trying to understand the other end of it.
Yep.
Right. And you don't need to be an expert in it, but just to realize that, hey, there's somebody out there who's making just as little money as you, maybe if it's a minor league baseball stadium, who works on commission, who needs to sell a corporate BP or whatever it is in order to pay their bills. So how can we both be successful in that, so that maybe we can both share ideas that make whatever that corporate VP or whatever it is more successful, but maybe there's something else that is going to help each individual and the team as a whole.
So cool.
Even during the internship process, I feel like it should be almost a curriculum portion of the internship that you go through budgets, you go through meetings, it's just as valuable to teach somebody how to mow or how to spray as it is to teach somebody how, the June forecasting for your budget needs to look, and then how to have a conversation with a higher up regarding, event planning and that sort of thing. So, I think, it's just, I'm sure there's some groundskeepers out there listening. I don't know what our number is here, Meg. But if anybody's out there listening, like, it's so valuable to the young kids on the internships to get the behind the scenes business of turf as much as it is about the agronomics of it. So
definitely.
100%
Well,
agree.
we know that there's at least 3 listeners, me, you, and Zach, when he has to approve this episode. So
oh, I don't listen to this. Are you serious?
there'll be more, because it'll be the communications team that reviews this. Not
nice. 4 listeners. Look at that.
Yep.
There we
go. Amazing. But no, it's a great point, and so much of what I'm really passionate about in this industry, what you mentioned, like securing that seat at the table. Because even as we see, like, we have these turf family trees and people are so transient and willing to take new opportunities. But if Weston or Zach secures that seat at the table in one organization, when they leave, they've already helped the next guy. Like, he doesn't have to come in and explain to the next person, why he needs to be involved, or why she needs to be involved in that budget meeting, or why they need to be involved in the event planning of it. It's like securing that seat at the table and having that visibility is really, that butterfly effect. It's going to keep manifesting, great things for all the people down the line.
100%. And I think one of the really cool parts, and we talk about this all the time at conference, right, is how willing to share information people are in our industry. So perfect world, we would have learned or gotten exposure to all this stuff in every internship that we did. But now, as professionals in the industry, we still have the opportunity to, at conferences, at local chapter events, to talk to different people of like, hey, this was successful for me. May not work in their organization, but gets people thinking and sharing information with each other that I feel like it's super valuable. And through my years in the industry, I also keep finding how small of an industry it is. Like, you're really only 1 or 2 people away from knowing just about anybody in the industry, which is completely wild.
It is crazy. No, and I think since having Weston on the chat, James Slavity, he used to be the guy that I would badger to find guests and everything. And he was pretty well connected, but he'd been out of the industry for about 10 years, as far as being a groundskeeper. But then having Weston on here, it's like, I don't think we've had a single guest that you haven't been like one person removed or had like this long, history with, or one day missing pass. It's my favorite thing to witness as, an outsider. But it's definitely what makes it so unique as well.
100%. Yeah, it's a pretty cool thing.
Definitely. Well, now I want to get into the nitty gritty about your current position, in the sense of like, lay the ground for us. How many people are on the crew? What is how many fields are there? I've seen several photos on your Twitter profile where it's like, oh, we've got a baseball field here, but it's like I can't even conceptualize what Central Park, Parks Department even looks like. Really lay the ground. And I think Weston's got a question too.
It's literally the most iconic park in the entire world.
It's crazy that we would not even recognize, like, oh yeah, that's a job too, when it is The world's most iconic
Yep.
park. It's
Yeah,
brilliant.
How
it's
big
I
is
think
it?
843 acres.
No big deal.
Um, and
That's ridiculous. It's
you
ridiculous.
you get kind of numb to how big it is once you're here for. I mean, 3 years isn't a long time. I have someone on my team who's worked here 38 years, which that's a long time. Um, but you get kind of numbed how big it is pretty quickly. So kind of the nitty gritty is so the park. I work for the Conservancy, which is a nonprofit that has a contract with the city parks department to run the park. Um, gosh, I don't know how many employees we have. It's in the 300s because there's an office building like a few blocks south of the park too. So that number includes that. On my specific team, I have 7 people, me plus 7. Um, the way kind of turf management goes in the park can be a little bit. I'm still not fully used to it, I guess is a way to put it. My team operates wide area mowers, 11, 16-foot mowers. We're operating large tractors, Vicons, Vertidrains, Procors. So we can't get to every lawn in the park because some of them just are too small, right, to fit a large tractor and a 1298 in it. So the park's divided into 3 sections for management purposes. So then section staffs will pick up, some of those smaller lawns. As far as ball fields go, we have 26, mostly softball, but there's a couple of those are baseball fields sprinkled in there. And then in the fall, 12 of those baseball, softball fields kind of close for permitting from a baseball, softball perspective, and 5 soccer fields get painted in the outfield.
Cool.
And that's really the only time there's any meaningful soccer field in the park.
Very cool. And
Yeah.
what are the user groups? Is that everyone from, like little kickers all the way up to like softball leagues for adults? Like what are
Yeah.
your user groups look like?
So for soccer, there's a ton of like my kids did super soccer stars, like the little soccer kicking on little goals. So that's all over the place.
I love it.
When the soccer fields are bigger, there'll be middle school, or I don't think there's a ton of high school games, but certainly middle school games. Soccer clubs will play soccer games. For the baseball, softball fields, there has been high school games in the past. Again, I think most high school games are in a different spot, but we do have that. Travel leagues, stuff like that, all the way up to like the Broadway League plays in the park. So I'm not a big Broadway person, but in theory, like the Broadway stars play softball. During the day
Like
here,
the people that are performing on the stage?
that's my understanding of it. I couldn't point out anybody on Broadway. So, but like the jerseys they wear are like the show that they're in. So
That
if
is
you were
so
super
cool.
into it and knew Broadway stars, you could probably point some out. So yeah, it runs the gamut of what it is. And then was it last week? Man City they didn't do a real practice, but like Man City showed up to, kick the ball around.
So cool.
Just because it is an iconic park. And I did tweet this. My only regret was, so they went to a spot where we've had some brown patch and Pythium struggles this summer. It was like, man, could you given a heads up and could have gone to a lawn that looks fantastic at the moment? Because then in all the pictures, you're like, oh God, there's that,
Of
that
course.
nobody else cares about, right? Because they care that a superstar from Man City was in the park. But then I'm looking at it being like, man, there's a nice dead spot.
Yeah. Well,
But
you guys have had like a ruthless summer as far as heat there.
I don't know if you can tell how much I'm sweating right now because
Oh.
it's 92 degrees outside and humid.
Yikes. Yeah.
It's been a real rough summer. But hopefully we only have another month to go.
Yep. Yeah, I saw you tweet the like forecast saying that like the temperatures on average are now supposed to come down. And you were like,
Yeah,
praise the Lord.
it's gonna be humid next week because there's chances of rain, but the highs are only in the high 70s.
Okay, nice.
So it's like, you know what? Well, it's better than 77 and humid is better than 92 and humid.
Certainly. And yeah, when you were saying, the user groups, I just can't imagine like being in middle school. Like that for me was at the height where I took myself so seriously when it came to, like playing
Yeah.
sports and everything. To have your backdrop be New York City, like I can't even conceptualize that.
One of the things that I still can't wrap my head around is schools come into the park for like PE. Like when you were in middle school, we had
Crazy.
fields and whatever it was that we would go do whatever sport we were doing at that time in middle school. And it was actually an old admin from when I worked at Red Bull is now a coach and PE teacher at a private school in the city. And like
So
we ran
cool.
into each other in the park and he's like, dude, what are you doing here? And I was like, what are you doing here?
So
And
funny.
like this, they come in here to do PE. Like you can see them when they're running their mile and it's just,
Wild.
I could never wrap my head around growing up like that. Right.
Yeah.
Like we didn't have a big backyard in San Diego, but we had a backyard, right? It's,
Yeah.
yeah, it's different.
It's very
You
cool.
know,
And I think what most people can get excited about is just like, yeah, there's somebody out there mowing those greens and painting those lines. I just love it.
Yeah.
do you have any idea how many people visit the park a year? Like,
So
is
I
there
think
numbers out there?
yeah, I think we're probably due for a study soon because I think this number's a number of years old, but it's 42 million a year.
Oh my
Like
gosh.
but it if you think about
It's
it though,
nuts.
like again, going back to like we grew up in say the suburbs and we had a backyard, like we're surrounded by skyscrapers. Like this is literally people's backyard.
Yeah.
When they want to get outside and just go for a walk, or if it's to play sports or whatever it may be, walk their dog, like this is where they come.
I
Um,
love it.
and it's really wild if you think about it.
Well, what's even more wild is like that means 42 million people don't realize that Zach Holm exists and that he has a job maintaining those
I don't know,
fields.
maybe
It's
that's for
just
the better.
crazy. Well, yes, no, definitely, being the magic elf in the background is the preferred method for most groundskeepers.
Yep.
But it is just so wild. And it is the backdrop of my husband's most favorite pastime, which is watching Impractical Jokers. And
Okay.
some of the best skits are always done in Central Park. Like, he will watch that show. I mean, the amount of times he watches the reruns, and he's never been to
It's a
Central
great show.
Park. He's got to.
Well,
He's got to see it.
now you know who to call when you do come. But no, like that,
Definitely.
like I thought of this before I worked here. Where it really I'd always thought of it, but the aha moment for me was at the training facility. We started hosting televised academy games, like just one a year
Mhm.
against New York City FC. And then when I say televised, they were streamed. It's not like it was on cable, but to we painted a logo on the field and to see how psyched a 15-year-old kid was to do that. I
Definitely.
came up with this in my head. I was like, all the soccer field really is a canvas for someone to make a memory on, whether it's the kid playing or in the case of a stadium, like, I remember going to baseball games with my mom or my dad, like
Yeah.
the baseball players made the memory, but if the field didn't exist, they wouldn't have been able to do it. So I started thinking of that and I actually used it in my job interview here of, as a sports field manager, I feel like my job boils down to creating a canvas to make memories. And in Central Park, that's so much bigger than just professional sports, right? An
Yeah.
example I thought of during that interview was like how many, and I don't know the number on this, Weston, how many people get engaged in the park a year? I would
Yeah.
Yeah.
imagine it would be a lot. Um, and the lawn behind their engagement has absolutely nothing to do with their engagement. But if it looks really good,
Yeah.
that photo is going to hang in their house for a long time.
So
Um,
cool.
so there's been, a couple other. I said that I started telling that to a few people in another company, which will go unnamed, not paint supplier, uh, equipment supplier. Like they're thinking about using that as like a marketing program, right? Because
So
if you
cool.
really if you really think about it, like that's what we do as a sports field manager, whether you're in a public setting or in the biggest stadium. I can struggling to think of a large natural grass stadium that's got 100,000 people in it, but regardless, is something's going to happen on that lawn or on that field that someone's going to remember forever.
For
They're
sure.
never going to know who you are, but that's I feel like one of the coolest things about our industry and jobs.
For sure. And there's the sound bite right there. I'll let my editor know right here. This is where you needed to cut it, because that
Okay.
was so brilliantly said.
Yeah.
And it's definitely been a common theme I think that Weston and I have seen is in one way or the other, like you guys are in the business of making memories. Like
Yeah, we are.
just I mean, in so many ways, like Weston's turf origin story, like being at a baseball game and seeing the grounds crew come out, like that one moment, how it made that pivotal change in his life. And same for you, sitting on the
Yeah.
lawn at the Padres Stadium, and it like that one concrete memory
Yeah.
changing the whole course of your life. It really is so cool that you play a role in 42 million people a year.
Yep.
They're kind of concrete memories. I mean, yeah, like my mom and I, we used to take a trip to New York City every year and go see a Broadway show. So I would be that freak who like would be at that like softball game. Like I know all these, but like we have so many photos like of us, in the horse-drawn carriages and
Yep.
being at the park. But that actually brings up another great question. Like how much of, a nuisance are those horse-drawn carriages to your everyday life? I cannot imagine the inconvenience they may play a role in your job.
I got to answer this one. Nice. They
We can always edit.
so honestly though, in a like in a serious note about it, it goes into the logistics of trying to manage, you know, 843 acres in the middle of New York City.
Yeah.
Is at say 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, the horse-drawn carriages aren't there, the pedicabs aren't there. But
Yep.
if now it's 10:45 when this gets done. If I tried to go drive down south where most of them are, it is logistically difficult to get around because there's a
Yep.
horse-drawn carriage going a couple miles an hour in the middle of the road. Um, so that just goes into trying to think about how we plan our day, and how we execute things that we need to execute. In that, there's times of the day where you can't really get into part of the park.
Yeah.
Um, so that's how I'll answer a question about the horse-drawn carriages. But
Your comms department will
yeah,
be very pleased with that one. But no, I mean, really that like as far as like user group traffic, like really what hours of the day are you able to perform your job? Because that's a lot of people to try and logistically move around and make sure they're off the fields.
we do a lot of work in the dark, to be
Okay.
honest. Um, we'll start as early as 2 o'clock in the morning if we have to.
Wow.
Because it's so we want there's kind of there's more than three types of lawns, but there's lawns that don't have fence, right? So by say 7 o'clock in the morning, those are probably going to be pretty difficult to do anything towards,
Yeah.
because there's going to be dogs or there's going to be somebody out there. Then there's lawns that are fenced in that open up at 9 o'clock, so you have till 9 o'clock to do things in those spaces. And then there's a handful that open up at 11 a.m. And then really after that, there's not a whole lot from a lawn perspective.
Yep.
They can get done. There's some places of the park that might be a little bit quieter that you could go up to at 11:30 or so and be able to still mow. But really, our day as a crew is starting to wind down here. And, it's like I said, it's 10:45 now. In the next like half
Wow.
hour,
Wow.
the shift. My guys leave by 1:30, because there's just you take lunch. There's especially on a day like today, it's the summertime, it's hot, but there'll still be a ton of people here.
Yeah. Yeah. Crazy. And what does your, winter look like as far as are you guys then in charge of, plowing pathways or, putting ice down? Who does that really fall under?
It's kind of like the maintenance of the lawns. It's split between sections and us. So we'll take our wide area mowers and throw a large broom on the front, take the deck off, put a broom, and then our bigger trucks will throw plows on. So my team does like the drive that's in the park. So it was before my time, but you used to be able to drive cars in the park. We still have
Oh,
traffic
okay.
lights.
Very cool.
Um, so we'll plow that when it snows, and then we'll do the perimeter sidewalk. Um, and that's about what the turf team does.
Okay.
the sections will then kind of do those smaller pathways throughout the park. I kind of like it when it doesn't snow. There was a lot of talk about it. It was 2 years ago. We broke the record for least amount of snow in a winter, and I wasn't upset by it.
Definitely not. Yeah.
But then we've also, these past couple winters have been warmer. We're almost to the point now where I feel like we can grow grass year round.
Wow.
I just seeded some seed out last year, the day after Christmas, and it came up. So again, those 42 million people a year, like we're always needing to grow grass.
Yep.
So, I mean, that's what I prefer, doing things with grass versus snow. So the less snow we can get, and the more we can prep for the next 42 million people, through the next calendar year, the more enjoyable it is for me.
So cool. So cool. And, I know both you and Weston have, played a role in our national
Mm-hmm.
association, STMA, SFMA. How big of a part of, you know, you being a part of this industry and you enjoying this industry does that association play a role in? The mentorship, the camaraderie, the networking, the conference, how does that fuel your fire throughout the rest of the year?
I mean, I'm probably never more motivated to go to work than after the conference. Like
Yeah.
being with your friends and peers is uniquely motivating to be like, all right, I can't wait to grow some grass, and you come back and it's January. But I would say the associations played a huge role. It was, again, like when my dad was like, go talk to Steve. Steve was like, all right, this is the association you need to join. And I've been a member of SFMA since I was in high school.
Nice.
And I would say all that networking, all is, getting to hear, right? Like I technically had to apply an interview, but it was someone reaching out to me of, hey, are you interested in this?
Yeah.
That I didn't know, but we had a mutual friend. So I think meeting all those different people through the years, the story of going to the Red Sox, right? Like I didn't apply that year, but it was through somebody else, through a letter from somebody else that, I'd say kind of owe the association all of that, right? Like
Yeah.
they're the organizing body that organizes all of that networking and professional development.
Definitely. No, I love it. And you're currently the president of the New Jersey SFMA?
I'm president of our state chapter. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I could probably say it out loud because I've told all the board members. It feels like permanent president at this point, because
Nice.
it's been like 6 or 7 years. And
Oh,
a couple
geez.
years ago, I was like, hey guys, if you guys want me to start to drift off into the sunset, feel free to just say get out of the room.
You're just
Uh,
like waving the white flag.
but I mean, it's not that I enjoy it, but
Yeah.
I feel like, over the past handful of years, right? Like my kids are 8 and 5 now. So
Yeah.
they're doing sports. They have swim lessons. They have all these things. I got involved with the national board. My job has gotten bigger, right?
Yeah.
That I'll be in a local chapter board meeting. We have one next week. Yeah, next week. See, I can't even remember when it is.
Yeah.
And I'll be 100% focused for that hour and a half that we're in the meeting. And then there'll be so many other things that'll come up in the next handful of weeks
Yeah.
that then when we come time for the next board meeting, I'll be like, crap, I was supposed to do that.
Yeah.
And it feels like I'm not giving the association 100% of my effort because it's now being split up so much.
Yeah.
But
Well, that is just the nature of this industry, I think, as well, is that there's never not an opportunity. Like,
yeah,
it's not like
Yeah.
we're all fighting for like one opportunity. It's like, if you wanted to, you could go and volunteer almost every single week of the year.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so it feels so hard to balance that and be like, where am I going to give my time this year?
yeah,
Because then also once you give it, it's like you've filled a spot that was needed. So it's like you're then expected year after year. It's
yeah,
hard to step back when you are boots on the ground and see how badly they need the help as well.
yeah. I mean, there's so much, and because when you talk about a, a volunteer opportunity, like chairing a committee on the national, so you're like, yes, I have so many ideas for this, and then people's schedules don't line up, and then it's 3 more weeks before you have a meeting, and like you start to lose that momentum, and then
Yeah.
then it's July, and it's 90 degrees and humid, and you're like, I got grass dying, I can't be in a meeting right now. And no, I wish there was some way that you didn't need to sleep and you could do it all, but
I hear that.
unfortunately that happens.
You mentioned that you're never more motivated than when you leave
Yeah.
the SFMA. I think we can certainly attest to that. I mean, Meg, for example, after last year, she went ahead and stayed for an extra 2 weeks. She was so motivated. So
I can't blame you. It's the weather in Florida is probably a little better than Cleveland. I've never been, but
Yeah.
just a hunch.
Weston makes sure to get that dig in there every chance he gets. That
I'm just jealous. I was jealous.
I supported. It was Weston. What year were we in Orlando? Because I know we had an MLS groundskeeper meeting, like 3 days before the conference, like the Friday, Saturday, Sunday before the conference. We went. My son was 9 months at the time. We went the week before to it was in Orlando at Disney. So like
yeah,
a 9-month-old, like, all right, let's do it. So I was in Florida for 17 days.
I love
And then
it.
we did it again after West Palm. We rented a car and drove up to Orlando. So it was again another 2 weeks, and you can't fault
Yeah,
2 weeks in the
look
middle
at
of the
that.
Absolutely
winter.
not.
I'm just
Yeah.
taking a page out of his book. Nothing wrong here.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with trying to enjoy warm weather in the wintertime.
Well, especially when you have young kids, to keep them cooped up in that
Yeah.
house, I literally go crazy.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So that was our whole thing is like I was going to be down there. My husband met me down there with the boys. And my sister-in-law is like a substitute teacher. So she came with us, watched the
Okay.
boys during the day. So we got to work.
Nice.
That's where people really, I think, take a gripe with my hiatus is that I was still working. So
Okay. I mean,
but to take them on the beach at the end of the day and let them
Yeah.
run out all that energy was 10 times better than taking them through Target, which is our big winter activity here in Cleveland is, roaming the aisles of Target.
we are the same. We will go to Target because there's a Starbucks in it, so my wife can get a coffee.
Yep.
And it makes winter really expensive though.
It does.
Because
oh my gosh.
even though you don't spend a lot of money there, you're still like, so there's $60 out the window.
Yep.
Just because we needed to get out of the house.
Are you on to the Mondo Llama crafts at Target? They're
we have some.
Okay. Weston's interest is piqued by that. They're like these $5 craft kits, and like they have a wide range of like ages for it too. Like your kids would still be perfect for it because they have like the more higher up ages. But all of the craft kits are like $5, and they change every couple weeks.
Yeah.
And of course, there's like a crazy psycho Facebook group, like mom page that I'm a part of. Like I'm a proud member, and so I always get the drop release, like when the new Mondo Llama crafts are out.
Okay, we've gotten a few this year. This winter probably will be because, like, my son has always been old enough to like take the time to like paint whatever he's got to paint on it.
Yeah.
Where then my daughter, who's like 3 or 4, would just dip the paint in, and and we're like, why did we spend $5 on this?
Yeah.
She's going to be in kindergarten this upcoming year. I feel like there's some potential there for some real masterpieces.
Yep, that's our go-to wintertime activity. Go to Target, get a craft, come home and do the craft, and then tell them that it's bedtime, even though it's only 5 o'clock.
I mean, there's a good chance. I haven't looked at travel yet this year, but there's a good chance to do that this year, right? Like,
oh yeah,
to plug a location. I wasn't on the board when they picked Palm Springs, but Palm Springs is one of the coolest cities. Like, that might be the city I would pick, like, all things aside, if I could live anywhere in the world. We went on vacation there as a kid every single year. So I've been to Palm Springs 20 times. And it's an hour and a half from my parents. So if we're already flying all that way.
Yeah.
I feel like we're obligated to probably spend a few extra days.
I think I just decided that Weston and I need to do some, off-site team bonding, collaboration, maybe some live groundskeeper chats for a whole month in Palm Springs after the fact.
I mean, I was
on the board when I was voting, so you're welcome.
Good, nice.
Thank you. That MLS preseason is what, 2 weeks after in Palm Springs? So,
Yeah.
I mean, there's some work-related things for you and Weston to
It's a big
potentially do
year.
there.
It's a big year. Yep. I
My
love
wife
it.
would kill me if I took a month and went to California.
She can come with you.
She doesn't have that luxury,
Oh,
unfortunately.
geez.
So
Yeah, well, Kevin, so my husband, his HQ is in California. So I do
Okay.
think like he has to be there. I think he has to be there the first week of February. So we're already planning to, instead of both of us flying out 2 separate times, I mean, it just makes sense for the family, guys.
It's sustainable. Only one flight, you don't have the,
Yes,
yep.
I love that angle. We're saving the environment. The Kruger family over here. Well, I have one more question for you, Zach.
Okay.
You mentioned so many cool elements of your job that like, light bulb went off. Like, obviously that's,
Yep.
something that somebody does. But what's one of those, like, what's that elevator pitch when you're meeting somebody off the street and they're like, "Oh, what do you do?" Like, how do you describe your job, or what's that cool fun fact that you tell people about, the Central Park turf manager gig?
I mean, maybe I need to think of one, because when I try to explain it to somebody,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't say it's very good. I just tell them I take care of Central Park, and they're like, "What do you mean take care of Central Park?" Like, and I was like, "All the grass in Central Park is what I take care of." And they're like, "No way."
I love it.
So maybe I do. Maybe at conference this year, you'll have to help me come up with my
Well, yeah, we'll help
my
you come
elevator
with your
pitch.
your branding statement.
Yeah.
But I think your job is so badass that really that's how you can just leave it. Like, I take care of all the grass in Central Park, and it like is
Yeah.
that mind-blowing element, and then you get to mic drop and walk away. Let them put the pieces together. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't. That's something I can definitely do better of. You know, and I've been in your talks, and it's something that you provide at conference, right? Is really for the whole industry. We could always do a better job of like selling ourselves to someone who's not familiar with the industry.
Definitely. And there's my little plug for anyone who wants to do that. Feel free to reach out. I think by the end of this year I want to be known as the groundskeeper's publicist.
There you go.
That's my aspiration.
I still get asked from people who know me and know what I do. When they watch a game, like, how do they get the different lines on the field? Do they mow
Yeah.
it at different heights, or do they
Yeah.
plant different grass? And I'm like, nope. And then I go into a whole thing about striping. But so again, just proving the point that, there's a lot of people who don't know what we do.
Definitely. Well, I will say I came into this chat on my last leg, very congested, very almost dead to the world, but you both have revitalized my spirit. I feel like I can leave this room and go take on the world. So I appreciate the last hour that you both were able to give to this chat. It was definitely very eye-opening and exciting, and I can't wait to go report back to the office all the fun facts about your job.
I can't believe how fast an hour went, but thank you
Uh,
for having me, and happy to do it anytime, even if it's not
Awesome.
just call and chat. And when you come to New York, you have to bring your husband so he can see the park.
I think we will
Yeah.
be there the last week of September, so I'll definitely follow up with you
Gorgeous
on
time.
that one.
All right.
Very
Yep.
cool. Well,
Go
thank you,
rehydrate
Weston.
yourself now.
What
I
was
know
that?
I'm sweating profusely. I'm gonna go drink a lot of water.
Well, Weston's been in a sauna this entire episode, so imagine
Yeah.
how he feels. It is a nice new backdrop, though. This is Weston's first episode with the new backdrop, and I like it. It's working out nicely.
The interior lighting's not good either, though. So it's better than the outside lighting where it was like
We're
shady.
we're gonna have to
getting better.
send you a ring light for sure. We need to get you like an influencer partnership with ring light. See how our
You're trying.
chats transform after we get some good lighting on Weston.
No. Awesome. Let's see you guys. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank
You have a
you.
great rest of your day.
You too. Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.